A campus goes into lockdown during finals week, students are hiding under desks, police are sweeping buildings with rifles out, and an Ivy League school is suddenly the center of a mass shooting story that keeps getting uglier the more details continue to come out. Welcome to Why It's Trending Daily. I'm Hank, and this is where I break down the stories that everyone is suddenly Googling, and I explain to you why they matter. So this is about Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, where authorities say 2 people were killed and 9 others were injured after a shooter opened fire near and reportedly inside the Barris and Holly Engineering Building on Saturday afternoon, right as students were preparing for exams and a holiday break. And if you've ever been on campus during finals week and you know how crowded and chaotic those buildings get, people are always posted up in the hallways, working in labs, running to review sessions, trying to cram an entire semester into one caffeinated panic attack. It's the exact environment where nobody is thinking, I might need to run for my life in the next 30 seconds. But that's exactly what happened at Brown University. Students and staff started getting the kind of alert nobody wants to see. Active shooter, shelter in place. And then it turns into real-life versions of every safety email everyone ignores. Lock the door, turn off the lights, silence your phone, hide, wait. And for a lot of students, that wait was hours and hours long. One student described the shutting off the lights, closing the doors, and hiding under a desk with other students while they waited for updates. And that part matters because the trauma of a campus shooting isn't only the gunshots, it's the uncertainty. It's the time where you don't know if the person is still in the building, if they're coming down the hallway, if the next sound you hear is footsteps, or maybe even the end of your life. Now, here's what the public reporting says has changed since the initial chaos. Law enforcement detained a person of interest overnight, not on campus, but at a hotel roughly 20 miles away. Multiple reports identify him as 24-year-old Benjamin Erickson. Public records indicate he had lived in Washington, D.C. and had voter registration activity in recent years. And there are also indications he was previously registered in the state of Wisconsin. And then you get the detail that immediately turns everyone's temperature up in the room. An Army spokesperson's statement says Benjamin Erickson served as an infantryman in the regular Army from 2021 to November of 2024. He had no deployments and he left the Army at the rank of specialist. Authorities are also reportedly looking into what might be an extensive mental health history. They're trying to determine the motive here. They're also looking into whether he had any connection to Brown University at all. And that last part is the fork in the road for how people process this. Because if he had no connection to Brown, it creates one kind of fear. The idea that any campus is just an open stage for a random person with a grievance, a fantasy, or a breakdown. But if he did have a connection, he may be a student, a former student, an employee, a rejected applicant, whatever it turns out to be, that triggers a different conversation about warning signs, institutional accountability, and whether anyone saw something and didn't act because nobody wants to be the person overreacting right up until the moment that it's, too late. There are also some reported details that, if are true, are the ones that stick in people's brains. A police official told the Associated Press the shooter fired more than 40 rounds of 9mm ammunition. Reports say a gun hasn't been recovered, but officers did seize loaded magazines. Even if you don't know anything about firearms, you don't need to. The meaning is simple. This wasn't one shot. This was sustained. This was intentional. And when you combine that with the setting, a classroom building during finals week, it explains why people are reacting so intensely. Because the story isn't just there was a shooting. The story is students were taking exams and then had to hide under desks while bullets were fired in buildings full of labs and classrooms and hallways. That's not exactly a headline that you forget. Now let's zoom out for a second because this is where the why should I care part becomes unavoidable. Brown is the kind of school people subconsciously file under safe. Not because campuses are magically protected, but because prestige creates this illusion of insulation. Big endowments, private security, controlled access, highly structured environments. People assume that the chaos stays outside of those gates. And then something like this happens and it shatters that illusion entirely. If this can happen to Brown during finals in the engineering building, then the takeaway isn't, wow, Brown is dangerous. The takeaway is there is no bubble. It also changes how people behave elsewhere. Parents start texting their kids more. Students start scanning exits in lecture halls. Universities flood inboxes with new safety messaging. Police presence increases. And the worst part is that the country has been through this enough times that everyone already knows the script. Shock, grief, anger, debate, fatigue, repeat, thoughts and prayers. But the part that people should actually sit with is the human moment inside the lockdown. The experience of hiding under a desk or trying to control your breathing, staring at your phone, wondering whether you're about to get a message that your friend was in the wrong hallway at the wrong time. Because that's what this is really about, right? Normal life turning into survival mode in under a minute. So where does this stand right now? Well, authorities say the investigation is moving fast and is complex. They have a person detained who has been identified in multiple reports as Benjamin Erickson. They're working through motive, background, mental health questions, and whether he had ties to Brown. They're also dealing with the aftermath for victims, the injured, an entire campus that just found out the hard way that shelter in place is not an abstract phase. And if you're watching this thinking, I don't go to Brown, I don't live in Rhode Island, why is this on my feed? Well, here's why. Because this story isn't just about one university. It's about the fact that public spaces, even the ones we pretend are protected, keep getting turned into scenes of violence, and the people inside them are expected to just keep going on afterward like it was a weird fire drill. That's the part that should bother you. Not just today, but the next time you walk into a crowded building and realize you know exactly where the exits are without even thinking about it.